Good evening. This is the August 17th meeting of the Harbor Management Commission. It's 4:45. We have Mark Foster, Harry French, Jack Hirschler, Betty Gabriel present in the room. And on the line we have Sam Cargill, Doug Metchik, and Jeff Stedman. Because we have some folks present and a flag in the room, those of us in the room are going to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Kim, you also have set on the line.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, great. Okay. First item on our agenda this evening is approval of the June 15 minutes. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Mark moves to approve the minutes. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Harry seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the minutes for the June 15, 2021 meeting are approved. We have the other minutes will be ready for the September meeting. My report, we didn't have a whole lot going on this last month. I had one anonymous note from someone who was concerned about underage jet skiers in the harbor. Thought perhaps that those skiers were launching from a dock, but without a name and an address and any kind of verification. I'm very uncomfortable doing anything about that until we have some verification from the person who sent the letter. The letter also noted that in the past that concern had been taken to the harbor master and he had taken care of it, but since of course we don't have a harbor master, there's kind of no way without some more specific information that we really can do.
If they had a registration on a Sea-Doo, that would help identify.
Right. If that person who sent the note is listening, I hope that they would, A, next time they have a concern, call the harbor police, or B, send another note with their own identifying information on it, and perhaps some information about the jet skis as well, so that we could do something.
You said underage. I don't happen to remember whether there's a minimum age by the state law. Does anybody know?
You have to have a personal watercraft certificate, but I don't remember.
I don't remember. It's pretty young, I think. Isn't it 18? Maybe it's even 16.
I thought it was more like 12 to get a safe boating certificate. I think it's
look it up.
More like 12.
More like 12?
12-ish.
Anna was young when she got her boating license.
So
I think in the end.
But again, the note was there was no. Hello.
Hi, I'm sorry, Sam Cargill. I think it's 12 years old. You think you can get a
12?
Safety? I on jet skis I don't know, but safe boating to drive a whaler or a skiff of some sort is you can do it at 12. My understanding.
Okay, so well, again, we don't. It was an anonymous note. It came to town hall. It didn't come to email. It was not signed. There were no addresses. There were no numbers. We certainly don't want that kind of thing going on in the harbor, but there's not much we can do about it without a little bit more specific information. So hopefully that the person who sent the note will give us more information. Okay, we had no new applications this month. Turning to the Lower Warf, Jeff has been in touch. Jeff has a lot to report on the Lower Warf project this evening. So, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and fill us in on what you've learned since we've last discussed it.
Okay. I believe Mr. Sternberg from Race Engineering is also on the line. We asked him to be available with
Okay.
during the discussion. So I don't know, Steve, if you're there. But we have the proposal that Race submitted for getting the permit again, because we know that the permit expired a while ago and we ran out of renewal options. So I believe Race's, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry I'm not there tonight, but proposal was in the neighborhood of $32,000 to get the permit again. And that a good bit of that cost has to do with additional survey and sampling and testing work. Now we talked about in the last few meetings that we don't have enough money in the original grant from the Port Authority to do both the new permitting and the anticipated cost of the project, even though we'd have to put it out to bid. And as we know that our inability to do this project is not our fault, it's the result of circumstances beyond our control and the lack of cap material from any other projects to cover our material. I say our material, the Lower Warf dredge material in Long Island Sound. But also, Mr. Sternberg can maybe talk about this, but there's another development that adds to this issue. And when we first got this permit, or obtained this permit some years ago, New York State, which is concerned about dredge material disposal in Long Island Sound, did not have the authority that it does now, and so we preceded New York having the authority to review all Connecticut dredging projects that go into Long Island Sound. So now our permit application will be subject to review by New York State, which has generally opposed the open water disposal of dredge material. So I'm sorry to be so tedious in talking about this, but so what we understand now is the case is that New York is requiring an additional level of sediment tests regarding material that has to be capped. And those tests are quite expensive. They're called toxicity tests or biological tests. And they could cost add another $30,000 to $40,000 to our project. And now we've got a decision to make as to whether the value to be obtained by the dredging of that area from the boat launching ramp out to the Lower Wharf is worth this added cost. And also, we would be applying to the Connecticut Port Authority for additional funds to implement this project. And the Port Authority also, when I spoke to its representative, has questions about the value of the final work and whether it's worth the additional cost of the $30,000 to $40,000. So this isn't something that we have to immediately make a decision about, because we wouldn't be able to do any dredging this fall anyway. But we need to discuss whether to continue to pursue the dredging of that relatively small area, or perhaps whether we should focus just on finishing the work with the boat launching ramp, which would mean excavating material from the toe of the ramp, and we'd have to put that on land and dispose of it on land somehow. And to get that done, which I think would be a visible benefit to the people who use the ramp, and then also include the replacement of the elevated pier structures at the Lower Wharf now, and any work needed to repair the wall. So that's in a long-winded explanation of this issue. And I don't know, Steve, are you on the phone? Could you unmute yourself and add to that, or correct me if I said anything wrong or incorrect?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, that pretty much summed it up. The state of New York, as of late, is requiring some additional testing, as Jeff went through. So some of the fees we'd even we'd shown on our last proposal was for the baseline testing regimen for the chemistry. Now they're requiring this biological testing to occur as well. So it is adding added cost to evaluate the material. So we're in the process of going through it right now for one of our projects. And they have confidence that, again, you're still always looking, making sure that the tests are going to test out favorably, which we do on this one project of ours. So the applicant's committed to doing it, but there is also that you still need to test out even once you do it. So, yeah, I suppose the question becomes what is a good use of the remaining funds, and again, even at best, it's still unclear whether you went through the testing and it passed, whether they would still require cap, at which point you're still waiting on other jobs. It is possible that if you did pass the test, you may be able to conduct your own project without any cap. I don't have the answer to that specifically, and obviously site by site, analysis by analysis is going to dictate that a little bit. So you saw what the last round was able to get you, a permit. However, it was only actionable up to a certain point, because the other projects that would need the cap yours never came live, or at least came live within the funding window. So,
if the commission chose or chooses to adjust this project, would you be able to provide a revised scope of work that didn't include the dredging, but included a feasible way of excavating material from the end of the launch ramp and also including the elevated pier, the replacement of the elevated pier and work on the wall?
we can strip down or strip up the proposal, for whatever work we need. So yeah, we can certainly strip out the dredging piece, which we'll take a good chunk of change out just from the sediment sampling alone, which may have been $12,000 or so, I think, estimated for the sampling cost just for that initial chemistry testing. You are going to still need to do some form of testing on the material you'd be removing for the boat ramp. It's most likely, even if you are bringing it inshore and to some final destination upland. I know that's a priority in the town specifically as well, to make sure that's managed properly. So there probably would still be some added cost there for testing and evaluating it for whatever upland home it may have. You also are going to have, if you decide just to go down the path of, say, the boat ramp and the wharf, the pier there, and the seawall, you may excavate and regrade to get the planks down, and may provide yourself a hole or so, I guess, a larger launching depth at the toe of the ramp. But obviously your approach corridor there would still be at, existing depths, that those really wouldn't change too much. So maybe a little bit of a hole or so, I guess you may want to call it at the toe, and then you kind of show up a little bit before you get out into the channel. So, whether that is valuable or something that may influence you or not. Because again, you're only going to be able to deal what you can deal with on land as far as a quantity of material wise.
Kim?
Yeah?
This is Ted.
Go ahead, Ted, please.
If I could interject some information and then a couple comments and opinion, I'd like to do so if it's an appropriate point to do that.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to refresh the commission's memory as to how much we have remaining in funds for these projects. So for the Lower Wharf boat ramp project, we still have a budget of about $21,000. And there's 2 open purchase orders to Aero Concrete for about $7,000 to $8,000. And then for the dredging project, we have a remaining budget of about $265,000, which represents the SHIP grant from the Connecticut Port Authority. So that's just information that I wanted the Commission to have. But when I think of our priorities, to me the highest priority that we have is restoring the width of the channel coming into the harbor. And we're going to need some money for that at some point. When the Army Corps of Engineers is finally ready to do something and dredge the sandbar and restore the width of the channel, I'm sure the cost isn't going to be zero. I'm sure they're going to be looking to us in the town of Fairfield for a significant contribution to that. And I'm just wondering if the money that's targeted for the Lower Wharf project, specifically that $265,000, if we could petition the Connecticut Port Authority to refocus that money on the dredging of the sandbar, because I think Jeff made a very good point as to what the value of this project is, given all the hurdles we face, and the Connecticut Port Authority now questioning if there is value to this. So could that money be used elsewhere for a better purpose, which to me would be restoring the width of the channel coming into the harbor?
Well, I'll respond, Ted, and I don't think it can be. The Port Authority is it's complex a little bit, but that Small Harbor Improvement Project program, from what I understand of it and have always known about it, and I've talked with Mr. Salvatore at length, including today, that's not meant for the federal projects. And it's specifically authorized, that those individual projects are authorized by the Bond Commission for a specific project. The Port Authority was to have a separate grant program for the federal projects. So we're still anticipating that we would be able to get money or funds from the Port Authority for the federal dredging project, but it would have to be through a different process. And I've been talking about that. I mean, I can confirm that, but I'm pretty well confident that money through the SHIP program cannot be repurposed for federal projects, but that there will be a program that the Port Authority can pursue to help us with the federal project. And I've talked to Mr. Salvatore. We'll get into the sand management. We're talking about having an on-site meeting where Mr. Salvatore, representing the Port Authority, would be in attendance, and we could start to talk about funding. That's another long-winded answer, Ted. But I don't believe we can. But there's another sort of positive thing. I've been talking with Mr. Hurley, the town engineer, about this, and also with Mr. Salvatore. Is the possibility, and this is fundable, Salvatore said, of money through the Small Harbor Improvement Project for first engineering and permitting, and then construction for replacement of the Perry Green bulkhead, because that's harbor infrastructure. So what we were directed, if we're going to make another, well, we have enough money in the budget now, I guess, for the dredging project, we do, for the permitting that Mr. Sternberg is talking about. Maybe we readjust that, but that we would also we could ask for money under a separate grant for the Perry Green work, and that's something that has to be worked out. We have to get an estimate and how best to do that, and so Bill Hurley was working on that, because we were told that if there's other, non-federal harbor infrastructure work that's anticipated in the harbor, we should submit the grant applications for that now. So I think there's an opportunity to get funds for the Perry Green work, but I don't believe we can use any of these SHIP grant funds for federal federal dredging projects. And as I mentioned, maybe the last month, and can't remember all the things I keep talking about, but the Port Authority has been authorized by the legislature to spend up to $25 million, or to allocate up to $25 million over the next 5 years for these small harbor projects. And then they have another $9 million that they haven't allocated from the last round of grants. So that's $34 million over the next 5 years. And so I would hope that we would have a good chance to get engineering and permitting funds for the Perry Green work, and then maybe any additional funds that we need because the estimated cost for replacing those elevated piers at the lower wharf, that's also a substantial cost. I forget, Steve, how you estimated that, but we may need more money, to apply for to do the lower wharf work, even if we eliminate the dredging part of it. But I'll confirm, Ted, that the question that you asked. I'll confirm that tomorrow.
Okay.
Confirm the answer to it.
Just as a sidebar, this is Harry. I saw in one of the newspapers that there were additional funds that were going to be available for projects in the sea harbors. That was probably within the last 2 weeks.
Good.
I didn't see that, Harry. I'll check on it.
So I guess to kind of back up, what we're asking Steve Sternberg and Race for, or the commissioners are deciding whether to ask Race and Steve Sternberg to rework the $32,000 proposal that included the dredging at the lower wharf, and take out the dredging piece of it, but continue to take a look at finishing the boat ramp, repairing the lower wharf, doing the work on the wall there that was part of that original permit. Was there anything else that was included that we're asking Race to do, Jeff? Have I got that right?
It sounded like it's a possibility that we will need to do some additional testing of the material to do upland disposal.
Right.
And I was thinking that could be very useful for us to have that information, because if we do some minor disposal of the material at the end to put that last piece in of the ramp, it would give us information about what it's going to cost to do upland disposal, and also give us information about the quality of the material that could be useful for further upland disposal should we ever want to do that. So I think that piece should be a piece of what we asked them to.
Right. So testing, lower wharf, refurbishing, rebuilding the wall, and moving enough of the sediment, the sand, the dirt, the muck at the end of the launch ramp, so that we can put in that last piece of concrete.
Yeah.
Right? Those 4 things?
More discussion.
Go ahead.
So I'm not sure I agree with your thought about that the cost of testing and, if I understood you right, testing and excavating, dredging and disposing of some material at the toe of the boat ramp would necessarily illuminate as to what a larger project would cost. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, tell us something about what upland disposal costs. Even though it's a small amount, we could probably extrapolate what, if we ever wanted to do a larger disposal. I was assuming that would give us some indication of that. But also, I thought I heard that upland disposal, you need to know the quality of the material as well, and that testing would give us that information.
So, from my experiences, the cost of testing, lab testing is by, that's a consistent cost. It's by unit or a number of samples. But for dredging and disposing of sediments, the cost is very highly skewed based on the quantity, primarily because mobilization and just overhead costs are such a big thing. It's just getting the equipment mobilized and demobilizing it is a big part of like a teeny job. So I'm not sure that you learn a lot. A better way to learn about costs is to look at recent projects in the area that are of a similar scale and with similar means of doing the work that you expect that would be done here.
My sense from our earlier conversations is it's very unlikely that we're going to find that it's practical to do this by upland disposal from just too expensive, impractical for the payback is what I...
Well, impractical because of if we think that we won't be able to dewater on the site. Otherwise, it's just the cost of disposal. You can glean it from just if you can contact some of the sites, mostly in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the ones I'm aware of, where you give them the lab testing information, you give them the quantity, and they will just give you a price. It doesn't seem to be. I've never had to do that, but I've reviewed documents from one dredging contractor who went through all these steps and called the guys just to be sure that what I was seeing was fabricated.
So I guess then, Mark, part of the question is, or part of what we'd need Race to do, if possible, is to tell us what the quantity of the stuff that we would have to take out would be. No?
Well, so I would invite, and I would hope Race would just, give their idea, because this is just from my limited experiences and my sense. Again, I've worked with cost estimators on several projects who had to cost the price of dredging, and that's kind of one of my few takeaways. Also, I'm just wondering what the quantity is if we're going small. So we're talking about a couple of cubic yards, I'm thinking, but just maybe would help my understanding of to define what it is that this scaled down version would be. Before I yield the floor, if I can, I'll kind of repeat for what it's worth what I said on a prior meeting. I think that my boat, it's a Mako 20, is probably about as big a boat as you see using the ramp. The vast majority of the boats in this harbor do not launch boats themselves. They pay someone to do it. Boats you get them 1 foot longer, and they 10% longer means it's going to be a whole lot larger percent, heavier and bigger, and it just gets to be a challenge for a couple of people to launch and haul a boat. So I can only speak to my experience, and I've done it a lot using that ramp. And for me, I don't really care whether that ramp is extended or not. And I think about it every time I push the tide when I launch. Just because that if you improve the ramp, the extent of the ramp by running lower, I'm still faced with the shallows that are just beyond the toe of the ramp. So I'm going to wait for higher tide or launch sooner or haul sooner. Just plan around the tide, irrespective of what we do with the ramp.
Okay.
And you can't control the location of the boat that well. The boat, it's a breeze. Sometimes it's coming in directly at you when you're trying to launch or haul. So you want some space. So if we say, well, why don't we just dredge it a little bit deeper so you can get from the ramp to the dock, that wouldn't be enough for my comfort level, because you could very easily blow it and end up on the shallows, and you hope the tide's already coming in. Otherwise, you better have plenty of beer.
Nobody waiting.
That's all.
So, somebody was trying to interject or to.
Yeah, this is Steve at Race.
Good, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't know the gentleman's name that was talking, but
Mark Foster was talking.
Mark, yeah, yep, yeah, I was that was one of the points I was trying to bring up with kind of just doing the boat ramp piece of it, is that you may reset. I think the plan right now would be to reset one of the planks and then add on a couple and excavate out to get to the pitch we need and to the depth we need to put on those two planks. But yes, you would be coming right back up on the shallows again, once those planks were set and, we cleared out just kind of an immediate area. And it would probably just wind up being an area for a quantity that could be handled the best or most easiest on shore. This work would be a different setup than dredging and digging the rest of the channel. For the boat ramp, we're talking about walking something down the ramp, a long reach excavator, and trying to excavate out as much as we can reach from land, bringing that on shore. Dealing with a dredging project for the remaining offshore would be a completely different process with a separate floating rig, and then getting that material onto shore from there if we needed to bring it upland to a disposal site. We may have some idea of the costs for disposal, but the dewatering piece of it, the actual dredging piece of it, is going to be significantly different. And again, the just doing the ramp piece, you may have some deeper water depth right at the toe of your new ramp, but you haven't addressed anything else in the immediate offshore. I'd also, we're creating unnatural channels and cavities in areas that tend to want to fill themselves back in. So having a smaller area like that, it may close in on itself quicker, maybe than, or at least noticeably quicker than digging a larger area, which probably means that the toe of the ramp becomes buried again at some point.
So are we saying no, don't finish the boat ramp? Mark is saying
Correct.
don't do anything with the boat ramp.
That sounds like it.
Until you can dredge the rest.
Until we could dredge, which
If
could be
ever.
somebody else's lifetime.
Right.
So what we're asking Race to do is to revise their estimate to include the wall and the wharf, the lower wharf wall there, the work on that, and the lower wharf itself, the pilings and the structure and the.
Kim, this is Jeff.
Yes,
Could
Jeff,
I
go ahead.
interrupt?
Yep. Please.
Perhaps we need to talk about this with Justin and the Park and Recreation Commission, because they manage that. They manage the facility, including the boat launching ramp, and they would probably hear, any comments or concerns. So I think that before we modify or remove the element of improving or working on the boat ramp, we should talk with Justin and also the Parks and Rec department about that.
Okay. We can do that. And we bring back the results of that conversation to our September meeting.
Yep.
That would mean that Race would do nothing until we accomplish that? I mean, it's hard to understand how that they would have a different view. They are not going to get any net benefit with respect to the ramp.
But I thought Justin has told us that he has received complaints from people about the ramp, and that it would be, that from his perspective, it would be beneficial to get that last plank in correctly. I may be wrong, but I thought that's what we had heard.
I guess I'm hearing Ray suggesting if we dig the hole to put the piece in, that it's likely to fill right back in and potentially cover up the piece we just installed.
Which doesn't solve anything.
Doesn't really, it may make it worse, actually.
Yeah, it may fill in faster than.
I wouldn't want expectations to be something that, isn't. It is just going to be an immediate area that's going to get cleared.
Right.
And then again, you're going to be coming up on the shallows. So that may be beneficial to some people. There was one, Mark obviously had his feelings on it that, when he's launching that wouldn't do much for him. So, there's certainly both sides to it. I'm sure I see, but that is in essence what the project would be. It would be taking an excavator down and excavating out what can be reached, what can be handled on shore and processed offshore, processed to an upland facility, and then setting the planks, and you'd have a deep hole near the toe of the ramp, and then you'd come up again on some shallows.
Well, the other piece that we also don't know about is if we were to do that and try to dewater, whether we can dewater whatever it is we dig up, it gets really complicated real fast.
And you've only got a limited time window that you can do it.
A tiny little window, and I mean, what if we ask Race to proceed with the project estimates for the lower wharf wall and the lower wharf structures, and we talk to the rec department, and we also, I guess, have to talk to the town engineer and get some sense from the other town folks about whether we can dewater right there, dewater whatever it is at Ye Yacht Yard, because if we can't, then we can't, right? I mean, then what do we do? Can you?
You don't even get to that if Parks and Rec is not really interested, then we don't even have to pursue that, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine, Mark, somebody with a vessel different than yours. It'd have to be longer but lighter, so that they're wanting to get the trailer down.
I can't speak to. I've never launched a kayak off that ramp, so I can't speak to kayaks, even though I sometimes will kayak. But it's hard to visualize. I think you heard what I had to say, but at the time I wasn't even really thinking about the sloughing of material. So this is very soft material, I know, from having stepped in it right off that ramp. So one would figure that it would shift either way, no matter what, but especially because it seems to be quite soft material. So if we're not getting that little hole that we were talking about before, what are we getting? We're getting a harder surface. So if you back your trailer with your wheels that far down, you're on something solid instead of muck. But I find that I don't have to go that far down anyway. If I'm waiting for an hour and a half or so for the tide to come in from dead low. So I'm not able to see a justification or a need for this particular type of project.
Big money.
Yeah. So commissioners, can we instead of waiting to ask Race to do anything until the middle of September, can we ask them to proceed with an estimate of the lower wharf work, the structures and the wall, and then we will do a little more homework on the dredging and boat ramp piece of it, and we could perhaps amend our. I don't know, Steve. Does that make sense? And maybe in September we can amend our request to you?
Yeah, we can be ready to, put together a proposal or amend the proposals as you guys want to proceed, certainly. It's not an easy decision to decide on the remaining funds. I mean, I'd be lying to say I know what the exact right thing to do is. But those are the things I see as just to set expectations. But just to bring it up, was there any further consideration for reconfiguring the docks there?
I spoke with Justin about that, and he didn't feel that there was any value to be gained by doing that.
I was even just thinking wrapping around the. I know there's concerns about pushing them further south, but if you could wrap them around the park there to the north to where the other float is, and provide parallel docking. I don't know. I don't even know if it would work. Just trying to spitball. Ideas.
At low tide, there's an awful lot of mud around those docks. An awful lot of mud. I don't know.
Around the existing docks?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at the survey that was done and where deeper water is, and obviously the closer to the channel line you can get, the better off you are.
Right.
So if you were to wrap around the point with parallel docks, or not the point, but the park area towards the east more, I don't know. It's just a consideration.
Well, maybe that's something we can bring up in our conversation with the Parks and Rec department, since it's their call anyway. that would be easy enough to ask again about if we're chatting with Justin and the Parks and Rec folks. So why don't we leave it at that? At this point, I think the commissioners, I'm seeing heads nodding in agreement in the room. I'm not sure about folks on the phone, but that we should ask Race to proceed with an estimate of the cost and scope of the work for the lower wharf wall and structures. And Jeff, that would be covered by the small harbor improvement money that we already have, right?
Yes, but I think we might need more. But we have the option of we can apply for more money from the SHIP program.
Right, is commissioners, are you okay with that if we ask Race to proceed with that a more limited scope than what?
Yes, that would make sense.
Okay.
And would we have that for our September meeting?
Steve, would that be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just the seawall and the reconstruction of the timber wharf, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless if we talk with Justin tomorrow and he thinks that there's some utility in rearranging the floating docks, but I don't. Excuse me. Okay. I don't believe he'll say that. I'll call him first thing in the morning.
Okay.
I recall you.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. That would be great. If then we could at least consider that piece of it at our September meeting, and presumably by then we would know what Parks and Rec's feeling is about the dredging, more reconfiguring the dock space, and maybe even having some input from the town engineer or the town folks about the dewatering and if they want to continue with the boat ramp project.
I was also thinking about Jeff's earlier comment about the Perry Green wall, that if we find there's a shortfall in the project here that we're describing, that would be good to know as we also think about whether we want to submit a grant proposal for that work, so that we do that thinking at one time.
And since you brought up the Perry Green wall, Jack, the question, Jeff, is what would we have to do to apply for the grant money to get the engineering and the project estimates done for the Perry Green wall?
Yes, Bill is working on that.
Okay.
We need an engineer's estimate of the work, and so the question is, do they have to get that? Do they have to put out an RFP to get competitive bids for the work, or can they use an estimate that they've already prepared? And so Bill is giving thought to that, but that's up to the purchasing department.
Okay, and is he going to go with the purchasing? Okay.
Yes, he texted me just a little while ago saying he's someplace else in Connecticut, but we'll call tomorrow. But he's been working on that. They have an engineer's estimate for the cost of the engineering and permitting, but they have to make sure that that's, if we submit that with our grant request, they have to make sure that that's okay with their purchasing department, and that they didn't have to get, multiple submittals or, the more than one estimate.
Okay.
But we've been talking about this for several weeks now.
Good. Okay. Good.
We'll know that.
Super. So next in September we'll have an answer for that one too, hopefully.
Yes.
Or at least more information. Great. Anything else on Lower Wharf from any commissioners? Excellent. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
Thank you, Steve.
Updated proposal.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too. Okay. Sand management. Mark, Jeff, you're on. Mark pointed towards the phone.
Talking with the Corps project manager, and we're getting closer to having a meeting on site with DEEP. And I talked with a DEEP person today to alert him, and there's still some additional information about the history having to do with ownership that we have to get to the Corps. But we're making progress, and as I don't know if it was Jack or Ted said, that's really the priority for what we have to do.
Right.
And as we mentioned, the Corps of Engineers is not so much concerned, interestingly, with the potential impacts on the plants, which has always been they think that they can avoid those impacts, and that a side slope steeper than we had originally planned 4 years ago can be maintained. They're more concerned with how we mitigate impacts on piping plover habitat. And so we'll have to give attention to that. And as Betty helped us this past week, reserve the funds that we had already set aside for the botanist and on the ecological consultant. So we have those funds that I believe have been put into another account so that they're secure. And so hopefully by next month we'll have more to announce about this.
Okay, great.
And excuse me, that we've talked about it with the Connecticut Port Authority about the potential, this gets back to what Ted was saying, of funding from the Port Authority. And Mr. Salvatore wants to be involved with the on-site visit that we're anticipating.
Great. Any questions, commissioners, for Jeff? Okay, great, Jeff. That's getting exciting.
Well, we have to address these ownership questions, but we can do that. Property ownership. Right.
Okay. There are no more questions on sand management. Mooring committee, Jack?
The mooring committee met last week on the 11th. Kim and Harry and Jeff and I were at that meeting. Again, of course, no harbor master. We discussed the current waiting list, which has 72 names on it, and then in addition, 4 people who have submitted applications that have not been reviewed by harbor master yet, so they're pending. So there would be 76 in total. And we're sort of fortunate because there's very little activity at this time of year. The bills we're getting from online mooring are very small. There's very little activity going on at this time. And so if we had to be having a vacant harbor master position, this is certainly the time of year to be having that happen. The online mooring system in April, for the month of April, inadvertently overpaid the town by $865 for sending duplicate payments to the town. And Betty is helping us, working with folks in finance here in Town Hall, to rectify that situation. The folks at Online Mooring were very apologetic for having done that and are thankful for our quick turnaround. And we discussed briefly 2 recent cases of wall mooring, south wall and mid wall permit holders who were in their first year and picked up different moorings than were the ones that were assigned by the harbor master, causing the assigned people to those moorings to be upset, and we worked to get those items corrected. In the course of that, people were asking why we don't mark our moorings, and I don't know if Jeff Engborg is on the line tonight, but Jeff did send us a subsequent note explaining that this had been looked at by prior harbor management commissions as an option and was determined to just be impractical for us to mark equipment, and that people tend to be in the same locations for many years, and they would be delighted to help people in their first year to find their proper mooring location. And that was it. We adjourned half an hour after the meeting began.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Jack? Okay, rules and procedures.
I have nothing more to update. I did note that the RTM has canceled their meeting for the month of August, so the soonest that they will be reconsidering the rule for Chapter 24 would be in October on their agenda. I'm sorry, September on their agenda.
Okay, super. Any questions, commissioners? Okay, plan update. We have taken a summer break. We did put the survey out for everyone to take a look at, the survey results. I think we did that last month.
Yes.
But there's no news. Jeff is working on some of the revisions to Chapter 6, it is, I believe, and we will, once we get a harbor master in place, we will reconvene our plan update meetings to move ahead. Any questions? Okay, great. The Harbor Master search, the posting went up in late July. The deadline for resumes closes tomorrow. We have received some resumes, and the committee will, once the posting has closed, the committee will reconvene and begin to interview candidates. Just to remind commissioners, we don't actually appoint the harbor master. That's done by the governor. It's our job simply to recommend candidates to the governor, who then may or may not do his own due diligence, and then who makes the final decision for us. So that's that search is in the works. Any questions, thoughts, concerns, anything? Okay, under new business, we had a FOIA request from Mr. Casey, who represents Mr. Owens. We have turned over materials to the town's risk manager, and he will take it from there. So we have complied. Commissioners have complied, and the town will take it from here. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Any other new business commissioners want to bring up? Any comment from the public?
Just here to listen to what you're doing.
Okay. If there's no comments and no other new business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Harry moves to adjourn. Mark seconds. It's not even 20 of 6. We'll see you all in September on the 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay well, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Mm-hmm.